Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Esoterica, and we're taking a look at Streets of Rage 4 today. You know, Friday is about random videos, and I wanted to talk about this game even though it's been out for a long time, but I want to talk about it in a little bit of a different manner, so make sure you watch this entire video because there's going to be some hints and nods to some of the inspiration behind this game, at least how I see it. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell, definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined to want to support the channel, we got a Patreon link down below as well. But I remember when Streets of Rage 4 was first announced, I kind of figured, like every other modern take on a retro gaming franchise, the game would be decent, but it wouldn't be the most amazing thing out there. And I will say that when I played this game when it came out, I was proven 100% wrong. Streets of Rage 4 is a masterclass in how to take an old franchise that people love from the 16-bit era and modernize it while also keeping everything that we loved about the game. This should be set as an example of how you do these things. There's so many modern remakes that change everything about what you loved and give you a game that really isn't worth that remake. Right now, that would be the remake of House of the Dead in my opinion. But Streets of Rage 4 is just an absolutely epic beat-em-up game, as good as anything that was ever done in the 16 or 32-bit era. This is a return to form for Streets of Rage, and I absolutely love it for what it is doing. And I will say this game looks absolutely gorgeous. I remember when it first had screenshots, I wasn't sure about the art style, but this kind of comic book cel-shaded look to it is perfect. But this game has nods to the original game all over the place. Here we're going down an alley, and in the original Streets of Rage 2, playing with Blaze is the right way to play the game, you have the exact same setup. Basically, the first stage seems to be like almost a one-to-one recreation in spots, but it does love to change things up because that card never shot out in the original game. But you can tell the developers of this loved the Streets of Rage franchise because there's so many different little nods to previous games and also to different moments in cinema that we will talk about shortly. But right here, definitely not a Sega property, this feels like Capcom and beating up a car in Street Fighter or in Final Fight, and I do love that as well. But all of the colors, all of the graphics, all of the gameplay, this is what I want when I want a beat-em-up game. And I will say that for a lot of the modern beat-em-ups that have come out, none have really held my attention like the 16 and 32-bit games. I always want to go back and play those more. This modernizes the concept of what a beat-em-up can be while also adhering to what made us love the genre in the first place. And that is just perfect for me. All the weapons, all the hits, everything feels exactly like it should. And that's the biggest thing in a beat-em-up game. If those impacts aren't strong, if you don't feel like you're hitting your opponent when you should because you're not perfectly lined up, you get out of the game. And I will say that this game's fighting mechanics are from start to finish what I want. And so much detail has been put into this game as well. All of the backgrounds, the parallax scrolling. This game feels like what we would be playing constantly if 3D graphics were never invented. If the entire gaming industry never got 3D, but they just kept getting more and more powerful hardware to create better 2D works of art, I think this is what all of gaming would look like. Now, I'm not saying I don't like 3D, I love it, and I love the 90s 3D, it's one of my favorite, times of all time, but this is just so amazing to look at. Every single inch of this game is just filled with detail. This prison cell here in the back of the wall, there's no spots that are empty, those broken tiles on the floor, the toilet paper coming out of the toilet. It's just filled with 2D love, and you can tell the developers love this art style. But another thing this game has is an absolutely epic soundtrack. I think it's as good, if not better, than the original games. So go ahead and listen for like 45 seconds, and I'll come back and tell you more about why Streets of Rage 4 is exactly how you should add new games to old franchises. But enjoy! I just love the soundtrack, and not only do I love the soundtrack, I appreciate that the initial sound balancing makes the music louder than the sound effects, because a lot of times in beat 'em ups, the music ends up getting laid underneath the impacts from the strikes, and you can't hear it that much. And speaking of the impacts from the strikes, I love the vibration capabilities, and every strike feels like it really does land. And there's so much detail in these games. As you walk up to the window here, your character sprite changes ever so slightly. I don't think the lighting is correct. She should be getting a little bit lighter on her hairline, not darker, but that's just the filmmaker in me talking. But even here, the commissioner's office, seeing the bridge in the background, all the skyscrapers with those clouds coming in, and you can even see what look like little birds flying around in the distance. It could be dust specks too, I'm never quite sure. But it is just filled with love and attention to detail, all while you're fighting this opponent in a classic beat 'em up genre. It's just so much fun. I love just pausing the screen and looking at what's going on here, because they have that map in the background circled with what's going on. There's the bar on the counter, there's the golf clubs. Not all of these details are necessary to set the scene, but the mise-en-scène for this game is just spectacular. But I mentioned earlier, this game's also borrowing inspiration from different properties, and I will mention one quickly. I want to go through this game more and see what other movies they're referencing, because when I first played it, I instantaneously recognized what I think the developers at .mu or Dotemu were doing. I'm really not sure how to pronounce it. But in this one area of the game, you're going to see it's one of the only times that the screen goes completely 2D with no depth, and there's a hammer right there. And if you're not aware, there's a movie, Old Boy, that has one of the most epic single camera fight scenes of all time, and it just so happens to have a hammer in it as well. So I think the developers were definitely borrowing some inspiration from that fight scene, as it's considered one of the best of all time, and bringing that inspiration into Streets of Rage 4. But of course, because it is Streets of Rage 4, it's also going to be a little bit of a thirsty game. There's going to be a little bit of a dominatrix action going on here. I'm not sure if those guys getting whipped or powering them up. I know if I got whipped, I think I'd be powered down, honestly. But again, it's just another epic boss fight filled with absolutely incredible detail. The candles burning in the background, as well as those foreground elements that are out of focus. This game has a very nice cinematic feel to it, and in some ways I love the art so much. I kind of wish they had a 21:9 mode for this game, or even a CinemaScope aspect ratio, because it really does feel almost compositionally like a film would be created. But again, I'm a filmmaker for a living, so I just sometimes see things like that. And you do get story in between the stages. I haven't shown you much, but I do love some of these vignettes here. She has been defeated, and she definitely enjoyed it. She's a dominatrix, and apparently she likes to be dominated as well, but she was into being beaten there, and that's been something that's always in the Streets of Rage franchise, and they definitely continued it with number 4 here. Now, I will say I'm only showing you the beginning parts of the game. I'm not going too deep into it, because if for some reason you haven't played this game, you definitely have to play it. I don't want to spoil anything for you. Now, I know that I am not new to the party on this game. I played it when it came out, but I generally don't make videos on new released games. But I think I may make a few now and again when they're this good, in that kind of pseudo-retro vibe going on. I don't want the channel to be about new games, but leave me a comment down below and tell me if you want to see more stuff like this. I just felt like making a video about a game that was recently released that ties into a lot of what I do on the channel. So tell me if you're into it, or if I should just leave this concept, you know, in the dumpster where I probably picked it up from. But again, this game just has everything I want from a beat 'em up, and there haven't been that many beat 'em ups out recently that I've really gravitated towards. Now, I have heard Paprium is extremely good, and I actually have a copy of that in my closet, and I have not even opened it yet. So if you want me to open it on the channel, leave me a comment as well. I'm not saving it to keep it sealed or to sell it ever, because I don't sell anything. I just never actually got around to opening it. With all the controversy, I was surprised it even showed up, and I kind of looked at it, put it in the closet because I got it right near Christmas, and I never actually took it out again, so you tell me. But again, with the winks and the nods, she calls in backup, a police car comes in, and hey, look, the original Streets of Rage has the exact same thing, and you can just tell how much inspiration this game takes from what came before it. But it doesn't insist on being a sequel to those games that doesn't have any original ideas. It really does run with its own concepts while honoring the series that it came from, and that's exactly what you want when you have a new sequel in a franchise that people love. But yeah, that's the beginning, at least, of Streets of Rage 4. I will say that as far as new games and franchises are concerned, this is number 1. They did everything right with this game and made it incredible. Short of that, that's kind of the game. I absolutely absolutely love it. If you've never played it, you owe it to yourself to check it out. Leave me a comment down below if you have any questions. Do me a favor, hit like, subscribe, and if you want to see more videos like this on the channel, just let me know because I'm willing to make them because I kind of like doing it. Short of that, I'm going to hit this guy and we'll see you next time. That's a turkey. Bye-bye.